Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for another Synology Partner online training. My name is Chris. I'm a Senior Technical Account Manager here, and today we're going to take a look at the Synology Backup Solutions Guide. And we'll take a look at all the different tools that you can utilize to put together a backup strategy for your environment. So I'm going to break this presentation into three different sections for you. First thing we'll talk about is things you need to consider when putting together a backup strategy. After that, we'll look at all the different packages that Synology offers to help you implement this plan. And then last, we'll take a look at a real-world environment, a company that has multiple locations, so you can see how all these tools work together in a real-world environment. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about putting that plan together. There's three things that you need to consider when putting together a backup strategy. Number one is, what is it that needs to be backed up? As you know, nowadays, employees are working from home, in the office, on the road, so there's data scattered out everywhere. So you want to make sure all those assets are backed up. The second thing is you need to determine where you want to store all that data. So it could be on-site, off-site, in a cloud service, or a combination of the three. And then the last thing is your recovery objectives. It's important that you understand and set expectations as far as how quickly and easily you'll be able to access that data if a disaster happens. All right, so let's start off by taking a look at different endpoints you can back up. So these include your workstations, any servers, virtual machines, any data in the cloud, but also all the data that you have stored on your NAS. You want to make sure that's protected as well. Also, if you have any other devices that I have not mentioned, reach out to us and we can assist with that as well. So as far as where to store these backups, as I mentioned before, there's three different options. You can store it on-site, like on a Synology NAS or another server. You can store it off-site, replicate to a secondary location. You can back up the data to a cloud service like Synology C2. But remember that best practices include using a combination of these three options. So the last part of putting together a backup plan is understanding your recovery objectives. And this includes three things. First of all, uptime. How critical is that to your environment? If it's super critical, you might want to consider implementing a high availability cluster into your backup strategy. The second thing is accessibility. If you need to restore this data, is it okay to restore it in bulk, or do you need to have access to individual files? And then the last thing is the user tools and restore options. Is this something that you just want the admin or IT team to be able to restore the data, or do you want to give individuals the option of restoring their own data? All right, so now you know all the things you need to consider when putting together a backup strategy. Let's take a look at all the different packages that Synology offers to implement this. So the beauty of Synology is once you install your NAS and DSM, you simply go to the Package Center icon, open it up, and you can pick and choose the packages that you want to utilize and install them right onto the NAS. So in the Package Center, you're going to find a variety of different packages to back up your endpoint devices, your SaaS and cloud data, and then also backing up that NAS to a different location. So let's start off by backing up those endpoint devices. Now these include things like any servers, Windows or Linux, file servers with SMB or rsync, virtual machines were compatible with VMware and Hyper-V, and then also any PCs. Now you can see from this diagram here that Active Backup for Business will cover all these. But you also have a couple different options. For your PCs, you can use Synology Drive to back up at the file level. And then we also have a new feature with our C2 cloud service called C2 Backup, which will allow you to back up your Windows servers and PCs directly to Synology C2 without the use of a NAS. Okay, let's take a look at Active Backup for Business. Now this is going to be the heart and soul of pretty much any Synology backup strategy. This is an admin managed tool that backs up all the endpoints I mentioned previously. It integrates with Active Directory, and the admin can set up tasks either individually or for entire groups using custom templates. The backups are bare metal images, and it offers global deduplication at the block level and the option of compressing and encrypting the data in transit and at rest. Also, the backups are forever incremental, which means after that initial backup, it's only going to transfer the changed blocks to reduce backup time and bandwidth. With Active Backup for Business, if you're backing up a PC or server, you simply install an agent onto the device. But with virtual machines and at the file server level, you do not need an agent. It has very granular settings. With the frequency, you can schedule a backup up to once an hour, and you can set up your own customized retention policy, and it allows you to save up to 9,999 versions. One of the best features about Active Backup for Business is the multiple recovery options. You can do bare metal recovery, which helps you recover disk images, applications, settings, and data in the event of disasters. You also can do an instant restore, instantly booting up a backup image on VMware, Hyper-V, or Synology's own hypervisor, Virtual Machine Manager. This process takes less than a minute. And you have the self-service recovery portal, which allows you to give users permission to perform instant file and folder recovery of their own data without IT support. Now let's take a look at Synology Drive. This is a powerful tool for file sharing and syncing. It transforms your NAS into a private cloud. However, there is also a backup feature available. This is great for employees that are not always on a local network. It's a user-managed tool where the user installs an agent onto their workstation, and they can back up their PC at the file level, and they can also access those files from any desktop or mobile platform using the Synology Drive app. The last option for backing up your endpoints is Synology C2 Backup. Now, this is a brand new feature that is out now, and this allows the ability to back up Windows PCs and servers directly to Synology C2 Cloud without the need of a NAS. And it also has options for both end users and enterprise alike. So now that we went over backing up all your endpoints, let's talk about backing up that cloud data. So we'll talk about 3 different packages here: Active Backup for Microsoft 365, Active Backup for Google Workspace, and Synology Cloud Sync. First, we'll take a look at Active Backup for Microsoft 365. This software allows you to centralize backups for all of your Microsoft 365 accounts. It backs up all the data for OneDrive for Business, SharePoint, Exchange, Microsoft Teams, as well as your mail, contacts, and calendar. It's a continuous backup, so if any changes are made, it'll automatically create a new version of that file. Also, you can retain as much data as your storage allows. It also has granular restore options, including a self-service restore portal. So this is handy if you have an employee that accidentally deletes an email. They can just log into the portal, go back to a previous version, and restore that email back to its original location. Or if you have an employee that left the company, the admin can go in and let's say you need to find an email that they sent out 3 months ago. You can find that email and export it to a different location. This also compresses, deduplicates, and encrypts the data during transit. For more information about Active Backup for Microsoft 365, go to our Spot website and check out the webinar that we did in October. The next package is Active Backup for Google Workspace. This is very similar to Active Backup for Microsoft 365. It allows you to back up all the data for Google Drive, Gmail, Contacts, and Calendar. It is also a continuous backup and also provides compression, deduplication, and encryption during transit. And it also has the same self-service restore portal. The last package I want to talk about is Synology Cloud Sync. Now, this is not really a backup tool, it's more of a syncing tool, but it is compatible with 22 leading cloud storage providers like Backblaze, Dropbox, OpenStack, etc. And what it does, it'll sync all the data from a third-party cloud to your NAS and vice versa. So that you can see the idea here is to make sure that all of your data spread out everywhere, whether on devices or in the cloud, is all sent to your local NAS. All right, so now that all your data is either backed up or synced to your local NAS, you want to make sure that NAS is backed up. So we have three different options that I'm going to go over today: hyper backup, snapshot replication, and high availability. The first one is hyper backup. Now what this does, this backs up your folders, system settings, and software packages from your NAS to a wide range of destinations. It could be another NAS, a USB, a server, Synology C2 cloud service, or a variety of other third-party cloud services. The data is deduplicated, compressed, and containerized in an HBK file. Storage is reduced with block-level incremental backups, and this has very deep versioning, allowing you to keep over 65,000 versions, which could be over 10 years worth of data, and keep your business compliant regardless of which vertical you're in. You also have a couple different restore options. You can either restore all the data back to the original location, or if you're backing up to a local device or Synology C2, you can easily restore at the file level. The next tool is snapshot replication. A snapshot is a point-in-time, read-only copy of a shared folder or LUN stored in the same volume. This is your number one line of defense against ransomware. You can also replicate the snapshot to a secondary NAS, preferably off-site. Then if disaster strikes, you can quickly restore those snapshots on your original Synology NAS, or fail over a replication task and restore data on the secondary NAS within seconds. These snapshots take up very little space and there is no performance hit. You can create snapshots up to every 5 minutes for shared folders and 15 minutes for LUNs. And just like with hyper backup, you can retain over 65,000 versions. All right, the last tool to protect your NAS is high availability. Now there's a few different options for this. The most common one is to configure a high availability cluster. And what that is that's two identical units connected with the heartbeat connection. One is active and one is passive. If the active goes down, the passive automatically takes over. We also have a couple options with built-in high availability. We have the SA3200D, which is a full functional NAS with the active-passive relationship, and we have the UC3200, which is an active SAN for mission-critical environments. Now you should consider high availability if you have a critical environment such as a file server, mail server, web hosting, post-production, etc. And this configuration should be part of your normal backup strategy. All right, so this is a lot of different software packages. Let me quickly summarize all the packages you can install onto your NAS, and then we'll take a quick look at some of the features available in Synology C2. So this reference sheet shows you all the different packages that you can install on your NAS. To create a bare metal image of your workstations, servers, and virtual machines, use Active Backup for Business. For workstations that are not always on the local network, you can use Synology Drive to back up at the file level. For your SaaS accounts, use either Active Backup for Microsoft 365 or Active Backup for Google Workspace. And for syncing third-party cloud data to your NAS, use Cloud Sync. This ensures that you have your own copy of all your cloud data. For containerizing all the data and settings on your NAS, use Hyper Backup. And to protect yourself from ransomware and an on-site disaster, use Snapshot Replication. Also remember you have the high availability option as well. So let's briefly take a look at some of the new services that are available through Synology C2. Now keep in mind that these services are either recently launched or coming soon, and we're going to be covering this content in a lot more detail in future spot events in 2022. So the first one we already mentioned was C2 Backup, which currently allows you to back up your Windows servers and PCs directly to C2 Cloud without the use of a NAS. And soon we'll be adding the feature of backing up Microsoft 365 directly to the cloud as well. A couple other features that are coming soon are C2 Transfer, which allows secure file sharing with end-to-end encryption and user identity authentication. And also C2 Identity allows you to centrally manage users, groups, workstations, and single sign-on for SaaS applications across your entire organization. And then of course, we have our C2 storage, which is our basic cloud service with the data center here in the Seattle area and also one in Germany. We offer different pricing options and no ingress or egress fees. C2 Backup provides multiple restore options, including bare metal or at the file level. You have flexible scheduling, customizable retention, efficient protection, easy deployment, and active monitoring. All right, so now that we've taken a look at all the different tools available to you to implement a backup strategy, let's see how they work together in a real-world environment. So we're going to take a look at our company that has 3 different locations. They have a headquarters and then branch A and branch B. At the headquarters, they have a couple NAS units installed and a group of workstations, servers, and virtual machines that are all connected to the local network at all times. The best option to protect this data is Active Backup for Business. This will take bare metal images of all these endpoint devices and store them directly on the NAS. This centralizes management of the backups for their critical infrastructure and local workstations. Coinciding with the backups from the workstations to the local NAS at Branch A, Synology Drive is also syncing the data from the Branch A NAS with the NAS back at HQ. That way, there is extra copies of this data in case something were to happen with the NAS at Branch A. On top of the 3 locations, the company also employs a hybrid cloud workflow utilizing a couple different providers. So the Synology NAS needs to integrate with the already existing data on those platforms and either sync or back up the data to the NAS. For normal public cloud offerings such as Dropbox, they use Cloud Sync to keep folders on the NAS in line with folders in the cloud. This way they can interact with the data on either side and the changes are synced across. For SaaS platforms such as Microsoft 365, there is only so much retention offered by these platforms, and it is up to the end user to back up and ensure the data is safe in an event of accidental deletion or some other disruption. Active Backup from Microsoft 365 is a primary tool for this platform. The 3rd location, Branch B, is primarily used as a disaster recovery location. However, they do have a few employees who are working in and out of the office. Similar to Branch A, they use Synology Drive to back up their PCs at the file level, but because they are constantly on the road, they back up directly to the NAS at HQ. However, they do have a NAS at this branch that they use for disaster recovery for the HQ location. The organization's primary tool is snapshot replication to send critical shared folders or LUN data to Branch B. This provides the organization the ability to failover offsite should there be any issues with the HQ NAS or some other disaster. And last, as a final tier of their disaster recovery plan, the organization utilizes Hyper Backup and Synology C2 storage to back up all the data on the HQ NAS to our secure data center. This way, if there is a regional or multi-site failure, data can be restored from the C2 storage to get this organization up and running. All right, so let's recap everything we discussed today. The first thing we talked about is things that you need to consider when putting together a backup strategy. So what data needs to be backed up? Where does that data need to be stored? And then what are your restore options? After that, we looked at all the different backup tools available. So for your endpoints, you have Active Backup for Business, Synology Drive, and C2 Backup. For your cloud data, you have Active Backup for Microsoft 365, Active Backup for Google Workspace, and Cloud Sync. And then for your NAS, you have Hyper Backup and Snapshot Replication and high availability. The last thing we looked at is how all these different backup tools work together in a real-world environment. So this was a bird's eye view of the Synology Backup Solutions Guide. If you want to take a look at any of these solutions in more detail, I recommend going to our Synology Partner Online Training website and look at some of the previous webinars we recorded. Back in May and June of 2020, we did a webinar series on business file server deployment, which covered Synology Drive. In August of 2021, we did a webinar on business continuity and disaster recovery in DSM-7. Back in March of 2021, We did a webinar on ransomware protection. And in April of 2020, we did a webinar on Synology C2 featuring Hyper Backup. And then one webinar that I recommend all NAS owners watch is the security checklist we did in October of 2020. If you're an end user and you're looking for a Synology reseller partner to work with for a future deployment, go to our website at synology.com/where to buy, and you'll find a list of reseller partners in your area. Our reseller partners can assist with installation and configuration, service contracts, managed services, consultation, design, and proposal. Or you can reach out directly to our business onboarding team at onboarding@synologyamerica.com. We can also assist with product selection and software demonstrations or refer a reseller in your area. So that's it for today. Again, I want to thank you for joining us for the Synology Partner Online Training. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and we hope to see you at future events. Thank you.